Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Good Friday, April the 10th, 2020. And I have the very distinct honor and great privilege of welcoming back to the show a gentleman that we all know and respect, and we have followed his work for a number of years. Had the great honor of interviewing him on a number of occasions over the years. And it's been a while since I've had the pleasure of doing it because I just haven't been doing any interviews. There he is right there, Mr. David Morgan, the silver guru himself. David, welcome back to the Daily Coin.
Roy, it's always good to be with you. It has been a bit too long, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that you're here because we have a lot, as you are well aware, there's a lot going on within the precious metals market. There's no shortage of different situations and scenarios going on, both with the physical market, with the mining industry, the refineries, the mints, right down the line. All of it's tied to this global pandemic, this situation where we have 1.5 billion people that are currently on lockdown in some shape, form, or fashion around the world. And it's just incredible what's actually happening in our world. And Daily Coin, come see me over there. This is David's website over at the morganreport.com. And David, I don't know if you have had a chance to listen to that interview with Egon von Greyer's that was released on King World News this morning, but he was saying that the refineries, we'll just start at one of the major choke points of the supply chain, that the refineries are back at 25% capacity. Those are his words, not mine. And do you think what are your thoughts on why they would restart these refineries when they are right in the middle of one of the major spots in the world for this pandemic? In my opinion, is that this is to help the COMEX and LBMA to get some product back on the shelf, because I'm sure you're well aware of the situation that's going on there. What are your thoughts on what's going on with this trifecta of nonsense?
Right. Well, first off, let me just give a shout out to Egon. I know him personally and have for a long time. I've known him over the internet for several years, and we have crossed paths physically, and he's everything you hear. I mean, he's the real deal. I'm gonna guess, I think that's the right word. I don't want people to take my word for it. But I agree, Rory. I think it's because somebody's putting a lot. So let me back up a second. In the latest Morgan report that was out just like 4 or 5 days ago, out Saturday, I put a chart in there and showed you what the refining capacity globally was after this shutdown. So 36%, so a little more than 1/3 of all refining capacity roughly a week ago was curtailed completely. As Egon said, now a lot of those have come back online at a reduced rate. 25%, he would know better than I on that. I don't have any direct lines to refineries. I do, but not very many. So I don't have a direct line to like all the major refineries, okay? So I am getting to the answer. Agree. Somebody or some buddies have put a lot of pressure on them to start up again. It's that simple. I won't even go further than that. There is somebody kicking somebody's, you know what, in the rear end type thing to get more metal out there. And why would that be? Well, you've already outlined why that would be.
Do you think that this is going to expose? I think it's going to. I think that every time that the LBMA and COMEX, they're kind of like the politicians here. Every time they open their mouth, they expose themselves as being not for anything that they say that they're for, and they show their cards all the more every time that they do something or say something. It's the exact opposite. And what we're seeing is, like I said, busted supply lines everywhere, and the refineries represent one piece of that. We also see the mining industry shutting down or operating at very limited capacity as well. And isn't all of this going to really expose the fact that the LBMA and the COMEX really don't have the product that they say that they have? And do you think that there's going to be a shift from the Western pricing mechanism to the Eastern pricing mechanism at the Shanghai Gold Exchange? How do you see that playing out over the course of the next 6 months to a year, or at any time frame? Or is it, or does it even matter?
Yeah. Well, you threw a lot at me, so I may have to ask you to reiterate some of it. But
Okay.
first off, I'm going to hit a couple of tangents. Number one, let's just talk about refineries and go back in time a little bit. Okay. And realize that, the new standard for gold is really kilo bars. And why is that? And this is something you don't hear on the mainstream, and you don't even hear an alternative very much. But what if the situation was that some of these 400 ounces, maybe even some of the 100 ounces that were shipped to one of the biggest accumulators of gold, being China, found out that these things were tungsten plated bars? What would you do? Well, you probably wouldn't make a big deal out of it, because gold is sacrosanct for over 5,000 years as the ultimate money, or God's money, or just gold, however you want to think of it. Central banks poo-poo it all the time, but they have it and they buy it. So the best thing you could do is they decide to keep their mouth shut, send it back to mostly Switzerland, and re-refine it into kilo bars. And that way, you know what you've got. So that's comment number one. Comment number two, what about the demand side? Why would Russia quit buying gold? Well, what if you knew that the system is blowing up and you probably had enough, and getting more is a ridiculous waste of time? You just say, we're not going to buy gold anymore. And then you make some cover story out there, and that gets out into the alternative media and the mainstream press, and everybody goes, oh yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. But what if? Just ask the question, why would they quit buying? Well, maybe they saw this coming a mile away. So there's two comments, one on the delivery side of gold demand and the other on the refining capacity, and perhaps why there's a new standard. So that leads to the Shanghai exchange, which does a lot more physical. And the COMEX and all commodities, there really isn't that much delivery. There's a lot of paper shuffling. And even when a lot of deliveries are made, they basically move it across a yellow line, or to make a paper certificate that goes from, Rory to David. And that silver that was on the COMEX is now mine. And there's a piece of paper that says it, but it never really left the warehouse. So there's that. And then as far as can they meet the demand, and the answer is obviously not. And is this, I forget your word, Rory, I'll make one up, but is this, is this going to expose? I say it is exposing as we talk, which you already probably agree with, but more is to be revealed. There will be more revealed. And we're going to see probably things that will shock even me. I'm not all knowing. I'm a lifelong learner. I certainly have a lot more insight into the metals than many people. It's been basically my main function of my professional life, but I don't have all the answers. And there's some things I've learned very recently from some of the physical hedge funds that confirm that commercial bar gold is being stalled out, just like we know from articles on the internet, into areas that are almost the most critical to keep the facade going. In other words, it's a high demand, very transparent to the public entity, that if they don't get gold, that's like the last place you'd want that to happen, because the word's going to spread really quickly. And that's all I can say at this point in time. And I'm not trying to be cute. I'm just trying to honor my word with those that are in the industry, and I can't lose that. I'm sure most viewers will understand that, and some will probably make a nasty comment. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that there's at the current prices, whether they are at 2,000 for gold or $25 for silver eagles an ounce. I don't think anyone out there that understands the story, knows the story, is willing to bring product to the table in mass. And if you, and I know you are out there talking to bullion dealers, talking to retail investors, talking to all of the people that are involved in this market at all levels. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing that people are going, I'm not letting go of anything. And that's where there's plenty of gold and there's plenty of silver out there. I mean, there was 47 million ounces of silver eagle sold in 1 year. I think it was 2016 or 2015. Mm-hmm. 47 million ounces right there. So those aren't coming back to market. Not at this current level. If they were, then everybody would be flush with them and we wouldn't be hearing of this. I think that it's going to have to be somewhere around double where we're at. And I think that as this economy continues to reveal itself as being rotten to the core, as you and I both know that it is, long before coronavirus and long before the shutdown, everything was a disaster. And now they've thrown $6 trillion of Federal Reserve notes at the market since September. How do you, am I just way off base in thinking that double is somewhere between where we're at and double is where the market is going to kind of stabilize as far as the physical versus what the COMEX and LBMA tell us what it is? Or am I just living in fantasy land over here?
No, it's a very interesting idea as far as, well, I don't know why you picked double, but let me expand on that. So there is and I'm not trying to get new members. I love it when people subscribe. I know most people just need the free information. I'm happy to do it. It's just, it takes time, that's all. And that's valuable. Everyone's time is as valuable as anyone else's. But there is in the special report section of the membership site, there's an article that's very brief called Artys Rule. And in that rule, this gentleman talked about how much of a markup you need in a resource company, and that's not the best website. You've got the morganreport.com/silverwater, which is an add-on. If you take the silver water off there and refresh your browser, it'll be the actual website. So Artys Rule basically says whatever the all-in sustaining cost is of a commodity, and for silver, it's a little higher than where we are right now. So we'll call it 15 for talking purposes. It needs to be double that amount, your number, for a viable commodity producer like a silver producer, gold producer, lead producer, zinc producer, wheat producer, you name it. I think you addressed the metals only, so let me come back on the wheat. But anything in the metals arena, you need twice the price of the all-in sustaining cost. So if the all-in sustaining cost of silver is 15, then you need to get $30 an ounce. And that just fits exactly with what you said. Now that's, from my perspective, and I'm not saying Archie's wrong, I agree with him, but that's for industrial silver only. That's not taking the demand side at money. And what is the demand side for money? And I'd say it's infinity. I mean, there's people out there that are running the world that can never get enough of it, right?
Right.
That's infinity on just one person, but you take the rest of the population of the world, most of us aren't megalomaniacs or have, greed beyond avarice. All we want is security.
Right.
And security is a different number for almost everybody. What's secure for me might be a humongous lifestyle for somebody in India or Mexico or Peru or Chile or any of those places, right? But for me to live in the 50 states, I need a certain amount because I know what my costs are, and I live fairly frugally, but again, comparing to somewhere else. So the point I'm making is most people aren't looking for any astronomical number. They're just looking to be able to save enough to be secure in their old age, or perhaps retire early, but that's a kind of a subset. So if you take all of that and you look at the demand side, and you see that the currency now is what I call beyond the backside of the power curve. And I talked about this on Jim Poplava's show years ago, and it's as true then as it is now. It just hadn't manifest then. And I'm going to digress for a moment, Rory, because I was thinking about the interview before we did it. I thought, I've been looking at this for so long. I have a book in the downstairs library called Bankruptcy 1999. And that book was based on the Grace Commission working with the Reagan administration to see all the fat in government. And they had a great proposal in several arenas of the federal government where they could cut fat, not really cut the meat. And they really didn't implement any of it. But in that book, Bankruptcy 1999, it made a very strong case that we were basically bankrupt back then. Fast forward 21 years and go back to Poplava, I said there will be a time where Keynesian economics is proven to be the farce that it is. And, von Mises should get most of the credit. But this is where no matter how much money you throw at the problem, it won't solve it. And that's where we're at. It might solve it on an individual basis for a while. You get your $1,200 check and you can eat. I mean, I'm not making light of that at all. What I'm trying to point out is the trust in the system breaks. There's a point where people say, man, I got this $1,200 and I'm buying as much food as I can because one, I don't know when I'm getting another check, and or two, if I buy all the green beans, rice, beans, and condiments that I need for the next 4 months, it might be $2,400 for the same amount the next time I'm able to go to the store, kind of thing. And this is what we're facing, folks. I mean, this is not fun and games. I'm not happy about it. I've been saying it like many others for a long time. I didn't know it would be quote unquote a pandemic. And I don't know much about that. I want to leave my comment on that to practically nothing. The facts are we have an economic breakdown, and it's breaking down further day by day. And there's very little that we can do because it only takes one point in the supply chain to break and not get a goods or service that you used to take for granted. So I've been, as always, a bit philosophical, and really the only thing you could change in this equation is one, what can you do on your own, which, if you're lucky enough to be somewhere you can grow food or grow some food. And there's things you can do in an apartment like microgreens or potted plants or whatever. And it might sound ridiculous now, but heed my words, you might be wanting to think about it. And then your attitude. I mean, you got to get to a point where you have to accept the fact that we are in a new world in a way. Welcome to Brave New World, planet. We're there. And we're not getting back to where we once were. And some things will come back and some things won't. And the amount of choices that we have will be a lot less than we used to accept and take for granted. And, buying grape, I use this all the time, Roy, so excuse me for those that are listening to this interview, but, grapes in the middle of winter. I mean, I grew up, I'm 67. I mean, there were times when, as a kid, and I'd go to the grocery store with my mom that much, you never see out of season fruits in the grocery store. You would see what was growing pretty locally that was available at that time of the year. I remember like peaches. Oh my goodness, we could buy peaches now. And that only lasted a short time. But now we just go in there, we expect every fruit of any variety growing anywhere on the planet to be in our grocery store. Well, I got the news item, a news flash. That's going away quickly.
It sure seems to be. It seems like that we are on the cusp of hyperinflation.
Yeah.
And you alluded to that in your comment about, I just got a $1,200 check and I need to load up on as many groceries as possible because the next time it might require $2,400 for the same load for the same stock. If it even comes. I mean, that's kind of what we're faced with right now is more of we're kind of looking at hyperinflation at this point, because like I said, they printed 6 trillion in Federal Reserve notes since September. This is April. I mean, that's not a very long span of time for that volume of currency to enter into the system. And it's not going to be, and you can help me to understand this, David, I don't think it's going to be corralled like the trillions from 2008. They kind of kept that contained into the stock market and on the bank's balance sheets over at the Federal Reserve. They're not going to be able to do that this time. So that inflation is going to get out there. All that currency is going to get out into the system, right? Or
I have to think about it a little bit more. I don't want to. Firstly, it always goes to the banks first, so we know that
right.
fact. But how does it go from there? And it's always about keeping the bank solvent and liquefying the bank. So we know what the main thrust is. How much does it get into the public sphere or not remains to be determined, in my view, Rory. I'm not saying you're wrong. Obviously, if they're willing to send a $1,200 check, they've got these special loan facilities for small businesses, large businesses. So there's obviously, you're correct. I don't know to what amount yet,
right.
But I think that you're right. It's, I don't like the term, it's cost pool inflation. I mean, people have to pull the money to themselves because without it, they're going to starve to death. I mean, that's maybe too big a metaphor, but there are a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck here in the United States. And there is a social safety net with unemployment insurance and welfare. But look what's happening to those two. So yeah, that money will be pulled, but thinking about it, just as I'm talking, is a lot of those unemployment recipients aren't going to receive the amount of cash flow per week, per month that they were getting when they were working. So yeah, you're going to see it in the system, but people will be frugal in their own way, meaning what I said, I'm going to reiterate it, that look, I'm not paying my rent anymore. That's saving me, $1,000 a month. I'm making half of what I used to because I'm on unemployment. And since I'm not paying for shelter, I'm buying more food than ever before. And so that's on the demand side. So I'm coming around. I basically agree with you, but I like to, think deeply on some of these things. But I think it's going to get to the point where you get, as I said, okay, you've got good cash flow, or you're, in theory, have enough money or currency, I should say, to take care of things until another 2 months go by, and that amount of currency isn't going to take care of things anymore. I think that's what we're facing, and it saddens me deeply to say that. Yes. But I'm looking at the facts. I'm not making this up or pretending that this is some sci-fi movie. The reality is the supply chain is broken in so many areas you can't count it. There are already shortages of certain items, whether it's supply chain based or people buying more than normal or whatever. It doesn't really matter. The lack of XYZ product isn't a question of why did it happen. It's a question of accepting that it's gone. And now you have to adjust to that, and you have to accept that. And you might have to accept the fact you'll never see that product again. And if you can't, if your whole life depends on a certain lifestyle and you're on an inability to adjust to the current conditions, then you've really got a problem. And I'm trying to emphasize this because a lot of it starts in the head. Don't let the powers that want to be control the way you think. Think reality. You know what? Think like, well, this is as good as my parents had it, or this is a lot better than my grandparents had it. Or you know what? I've been kind of on my duff a little too much anyway. Maybe I need to start walking more, get to know my neighbors better, start reading a book. What a challenge, not something off the screen or whatever. So this is I think it's a spiritual challenge in a lot of ways for basically humanity at large. And there's going to be people out there that have a nice big pile of gold that aren't going to make it because they don't have the right attitude or the ability to adjust. And there'll be people that don't have any that will be able to adapt, adjust, and get the right attitude. So it's not all about preserving your wealth, which is basically what, my main message has been. But, there's a subset of that. I signed off every single report since I started, wishing you health above wealth, wisdom beyond knowledge. Because if you don't have health, it doesn't matter how much wealth you've got. And if you're not really wise about how the world works and it changes, whether we want it to or not, and you're able to adapt, then all the knowledge doesn't mean anything. You've got to take applied knowledge to be wise. So there's that.
I love it. That was really great. Thank you, David, because that's what we really need. I mean, like you said, there will be people that have massive pile of gold that aren't going to make it. And then there'll be others that won't have any that will. And it's not because of what they have or don't have. It's because of their perception. It's because of the mindset that they bring. It's the attitude that they own. It's their spiritual foundation that they stand upon. All of these things matter, and they matter greatly. They are the key to weathering the storm that we find ourselves in. I want to ask you, David, I know that, you're called your nickname is the Silver Guru, and we see silver, the market is seizing up at this point. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I really want to hear what your thoughts on what you see and what you hear within the physical silver market versus, well, the COMEX, the digital silver market, is really of no consequence, in my opinion, at this point. And I think that people are just going to start turning their back on it completely. But what are your thoughts on where we're at in the silver, in the physical silver market as of right now?
Yeah. Okay, good. Great question. I also want to know the answer, but I'll give you my current answer. So to stay consistent, plus, I have a paid membership. What I wrote in the last report was that it's similar to 2008 from the aspect that initially it looks like it's a manufacturing problem, not a silver shortage. So if we go back to 2008, what we found was we had these huge premiums, like 30% on all retail silver products, be it, government minted coins, privately minted silver rounds, 1 ounce wafers, 10 ounce bars, 100 ounce bars. You just couldn't get it without paying a huge premium and a long wait, a long delay to delivery. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't a silver commercial bar shortage at that time. It was just the ability to turn those commercial bars into retail product. So when I wrote the report, I said, this appears to be the similar situation at this time, but it could be different this time. It hasn't happened yet. And I put yet in bold and I underlined it. So then I went on from there to kind of use a bit of conjecture from the facts I had at that time, which are changing daily. And that is what's really going on at the LBMA and what's really going on at the COMEX, and what is their ability to perform. And obviously, there is a lack of ability to perform. And as I said earlier, not trying to make anything top secret, but I've been asked to just keep it quiet for now, out of the public arena for now. But there are certain absolute delivery problems on the commercial level. We did not see that in 2008. So de facto, that's new, and that's a yet that's come true. How far does that go? I don't know. I'm biased. I'm bullish. I am for sound money. I mean, if you go back basically where, things were great and we lived at one with nature, like the Native Americans of this country, before the conquerors came over here, they didn't do a lot of trading because they basically picked everything they needed off of the trees around them, more or less.
Exactly.
And then from that point, we went into sound money. And at least sound money was a way to divide labor and do your best and get paid for it in honest terms for basically everyone. And then once you go to fiat, you get the end game fiasco that we're in now. But I digress to come back. So I think that the supply chain is going to weaken further. Why is that? Well, there could be storage houses at the LBMA and the COMEX that have vast amounts, relatively speaking, of finished product, but it's gone back to what I've talked about for years. How many claims are there on that? How much has been leased? How much has been swapped? How much has been used for collateral more than once? So now this is where the adage that I think Greg Hunter coined, and it's either you have it or you don't have it. And a lot of people, I'll give one anecdote that I can give that's not, no, and there's just kind of one area I don't want to touch on right now, and I will as soon as I'm able. But RCB, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, gentleman has these very nice looking certificates from the bank that are basically receipts to get your silver. Well, guess what? I won't say he's unable to obtain it. I will say, look you in the camera's eye and state emphatically that he's getting so much runaround of how he has to proceed to get that silver, which should be a simple exchange. It's your bank, your bank with this receipt, hand it over. It should be that simple. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's not even close to that. He's getting a runaround like you wouldn't believe. So that's just one instance, and you can use that and multiply it many, many fold to determine what the real story is. I mean, from the beginning, Rory, I said, if you went to, the Rose Bowl and you put everything on the 50-yard line that was on a paper certificate for silver on one side of the 50-yard line, and you put all the physical silver on the other side of the 50-yard line, they don't match. They don't even match close. They don't match like 2 to 1 or 4 to 1. It could be 100 to 1. I don't know the number.
You're going to need multiple Rose Bowls.
There's a lot of claims that are fictions.
Oh, and I pulled that eBay up, that screen, to show that the disconnect in what dealers and individuals are asking for. Those were 2020 Silver Eagles. That was the search that I did. And there's a massive disconnect in what you can have and what the gentleman's paper certificate hanging on his wall says. Those are two completely different things. What he has is nothing. Except a piece of paper. He's got a really nice, I'm sure it's a nice frame.
Oh, it looks good.
I'm sure it looks beautiful. I got plenty of artwork right behind me, but I'm not, that's not where I'm holding my wealth. That's right. It's a big difference. And it's,
I want to just expand a little bit on the COMEX or the futures markets.
Okay.
So what's the spot market? Well, the spot market means right now delivery on demand. Bang, I'm pounding the table. I need silver. I need gold. I need wheat, whatever it is. So the spot market really has no limit. So this is where you get what we call backwardization. So silver in the paper market is $15.50, but I'm paying $20 because I need it like my truck is in the back, fill it up. Okay, that's the spot market. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is that the demand is so great that people are willing to pay now for something they can actually touch than something in the future that's going to cost them far less. Far left. It must have been a Freudian slip. Anyway, we have a situation where a lot of people are putting demand on it, and that's not going away. In fact, to the best of my memory, in 2008, I do remember it was about a 2.5-month bottom. This one, the bottom in gold has been almost minuscule. I mean, it's been a few days. We're already back into the 1600 level. When I started, before I saw it being this year is the reset, which, I was waiting for, whatever. But I said, I think gold could get to 1750 this year. As a conservative, I try to be conservative. Looks like we could get to that in a couple more weeks. And you're not seeing any subsiding of the spot demand. I'm not talking necessarily on the futures. I'm talking about the public at large. And you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and I have a little more insight there as far as the people that buy silver commercial bars, like a wealthy individual buys 100-ounce bars. And so where do they go? Well, when they call up the PSLV and they say, I want to put in X millions of dollars into the silver market, they've got to go source those. So they got to come from somewhere. And if the refineries are curtailed somewhat and the supply chain is not what it used to be because all these mines aren't producing, and the people that own it are holding it tight because they know the price is only going up regardless of what the derivatives market is projecting on their screen, you've got a situation that we might see that break that we've all talked about for so long, where I don't care what you're quoting me over there. I want it on the spot market now, and no monkey business, right? And then when people see that are willing to put up their money and wait that 10 weeks because they trust that dealer, and I won't name any of them. I'm friends with most of the good ones and the bigger ones, and they're doing their best, but they got to buy it from a wholesaler or a refiner or whomever and produce and get that produced product and send it. And what if, the Postal Service has a problem and they're only delivering 3 days a week instead of 6 days a week? Or God forbid, there's an outbreak in a major, center for FedEx or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that people don't think about that could take place in the future, where you could be in a situation where your silver is there, it's sitting in a warehouse with your name on it, but you can't get delivery of it.
Well, that's I don't know which is worse, having a certificate hanging on the wall that says you don't have anything, but it's in a nice frame, or having an order stalled somewhere in transit. That would be, what a nightmare. What an awful feeling that would be. And I'm very grateful, David, for the education that I've received from you over the years. It's helped me a lot, and I hope that this helps people that are listening right now that are coming new to the market, that are new to this channel, and that's my sincere hope. And because it's, at the end of the day, that's all that we have. All we have is each other. Yeah. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And but you've helped me to understand that I have to have it in my hand before the situation happens, in order to ensure that I'm in the position that I want to be in. And now that we are in this nightmare that you and I have discussed over the years, I mean, I feel for the people that aren't in the position that they want to be in, because it's going to get tough. And those prices that you could see on eBay, I mean, they're $10 higher than what COMEX says that it should be.
Right.
So that's only going to get worse. That's why when I said double, we're almost there. I mean, we're 70% there now. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not that far off.
Right.
And you said that you were looking at 17 to 1750 for gold. We've already passed what I said we were going to be at gold for this year. We're already.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out there. I mean, I think we're going to get to the nominal high of 1900 this year, and we'll probably go beyond that. And I would, and I know I might sound like Dora Doomer, and I don't mean to, but it's a reality. Again, you check my premises and you check your own, and you make your own determination. I'm here to be of maximum service to others, and I really mean that. But there's a film clip that I used to use in the early days about the breakdown, and it comes from a movie that was made, I think, in 1981 called Rollover. And in that clip, there's a gentleman that's the head trader at a major New York bank, and they're asked to basically cash out all accounts for the Arabs and send them their cash, send them, sell my bonds, sell my stocks, sell my CDs, sell my currency swaps, sell all my positions, just send me the cash. So he announces to the trading floor that the Arabs have hit us. They've hit everybody. It's not just our banks. We want everything sold. Currency, no positions, which is an interesting thing to bring up, because since we do have, floating exchange rates, they go so wild in that scenario. You really don't want to bet, the dollar's better than the yen or the yen's better than the dollar, whatever. Although I would forecast the dollar's going to continue to strengthen even now until it's done. And there's reasons for that I don't have time to go into. So currency, no positions. And then when the traders comes up to him and starts talking about how bad things are just in a matter of a few minutes, and he says, currency's no positions, everything's sold, such and such loans, get rid of even government bonds, and gold, buy what you can get and pray. So after he makes that statement, this trader comes up to him and starts telling him how much the stock market's off. They pull the euro deposits, all this stuff. And then she says, gold has just gone over 2,000 the ounce. And he says to her, well, that'll be cheap by tonight. And that kind of sent chills down my spine, because, as I said at the beginning of our interview, Rory, and everybody knows this that follows your work or my work, the banks may make fun of gold. They may call it a pet rock in the Wall Street Journal and all this stuff, but watch what they do now, what they say. Mm-hmm. All the major central banks have gold. And there's a reason for that.
Exactly.
So I can leave it there. I think we might have covered everything. Is there anything you want to summarize or ask me further? I feel like I've done a good job for this interview, or my best that I can.
You've done an excellent job, David, as you always do, and I apologize for it going a little longer than what I'd originally planned. The only thing that I would say is that go see David over at the morganreport.com. Come see me over at the dailycoin.org. David, I appreciate it, and if you would do me a huge favor and leave the people with your traditional ending.
There is nothing more powerful than the truth. Not your truth, not your buddy's truth, not some new age truth, but the truth. There are absolutes in this world, and the closer you get to the truth, the better we're all going to be.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we will talk with you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Roy.